back to AWS On Air in our live coverage of Remars here in fabulous Las Vegas. I'm AM Grabelny, solutions architect here. You just saw me pitching my haunted doll business. I'm here with Steve. Steve, who are you?
I'm Steve Roberts, developer advocate for .NET and PowerShell. I have no haunted dolls with me today.
No?
Although I would kind of indicate you might be a haunted doll. You do haunt me.
I do.
We
will be a marketplace. So if you do have any, let me know.
Yeah.
You can sell them on the marketplace.
Yeah.
We're here for another installment of what we have coined as, you want to give the brand?
Amster and the Brits Code Corner.
Code Corner!
Yeah.
I love it. We did .NET yesterday with you.
Yep.
Surprising everyone, I think. Yeah, I thought you were going to pull out some Java, but nope.
Nope.
C# only, okay. And today we're going to be doing what? More .NET.
More .NET,
Okay.
funnily enough, yeah. So I figured that there's not actually any code in this code segment. We're going to be looking at code later on. Well, it's kind of code, kind of cornerish.
Okay.
I thought
code adjacent corner.
Right, because we did the demo on your machine yesterday, because mine was having some difficulties with power. I figured today that we could take a look at our IDE Toolkits. Right, because obviously yesterday we showed how easy it was to code with the SDK against our AI service, against actually any AWS service, but we were focused on an AI service. Today we could take a look at the environments you can use when you're writing that code and the toolkits that we have available for some of the more common IDEs.
We saw one briefly when we looked at my machine.
Right.
You got to see what I like to use, which is Visual Studio
Code.
But we didn't talk about the tools that are built into Visual Studio Code that our teams produce.
Yeah, so let's go check out the toolkits.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to start with Visual Studio, because this is obviously the environment that I guess .NET devs know and love the most. It's quite
not all of us.
Well, not all of us, no, but it's a great IDE. So we've had a toolkit for Visual Studio now for going on 10 years, and it has a whole bunch of features in it. I'm going to come back to this screen in a moment, but when you install it, and you install it from the Visual Studio Marketplace, just look for AWS, you'll see this entry. You'll also see an entry, by the way, for our porting assistant for .NET. So that lets you take a .NET Framework app and port it across to .NET. So the cross-platform .NET. It takes a bunch of the heavy lifting out and does all that for you. So,
do you happen to know anyone who worked on these tools, Steve?
There's a rumor that I may have worked on one of them.
So. Is this all coming together in my mind now while we're up here, I think? Okay.
But once you install the toolkit for Visual Studio, what you'll get is a new view menu entry here called AWS Explorer. And this is an Explorer view onto a bunch of services that, we kind of felt at the time we wrote this that developers would want to use in their day-to-day code development.
Yes.
So you can see in here I've got things like Dynamodb, our NoSQL database, right? I can create tables in here. I don't think I actually have any data in this table, but let's take a quick look. I do have some data,
Oh, there you go.
So, I can come in here, I can actually edit these fields live inside the IDE. So if this is test data for my application, I can create new tables, I can edit the data, add additional test data, etc.
Didn't have to log into the AWS console, didn't have to use...
No, in fact, if you look over here on the top left of the Explorer, I've got my credential profile loaded that I'm using. I've got my region drop-down. I can select which region that I'm working in.
Okay.
Let's see what else do we have in here. So, EC2. So this is one of my favorites. I can work with EC2 virtual machines inside here. So I can launch new ones. I can start, stop, and terminate instances. Launching is done by a nice, convenient wizard. Again, I don't need to go into the web console. I can launch directly from my IDE.
Okay.
And one really nice touch, I'm not going to do it today because it's going to take too long, but I can actually do Open Remote Desktop. So I can remote desktop or SSH into an instance directly from within my IDE. Assuming the port is open, of course, in the security group, but I can get in. I don't need to enter the password. The toolkit does all that for me.
Oh, that's nice.
So that's a nice time saver.
Yes.
See, Amazon S3, I can create new buckets. I can actually go in and take a look at what's in a bucket, so I can drill up and down. And it shows like a folder hierarchy. Now, S3 is not a file system.
No.
Right?
No.
But we make it look like one because it's familiar kind of environment.
You can prefix files.
You can prefix
things
files.
Like that. Yeah.
I can upload files, upload folders, delete them. I can come in here and change the properties on an object, make it public or whatever I'm going to do to the actual object itself.
I don't want to interrupt your flow, but I will, as I am wont to do.
As you are wont to do.
Yeah, I usually do. For our friends who are not developers watching, maybe, we threw out this IDE term. Maybe nobody's ever seen Visual Studio before. What is this normally for? Like, what am I, as a dev, going to go in and work in?
So this is where I'm going to work with my code, my projects, right? So integrated development environment. So Here I can create new projects. We're going to come to deployment in a second.
Okay.
So it's not just editing code, but working with services.
We've got that over on the right-hand side, too. That's one of your projects.
Yeah.
You've got code over there.
It's a sample project I created this morning, but yes.
Well,
doesn't
take
do very
credit
much,
for it, Steve. Don't.
I can work with Lambda functions inside here. I can bring up a little testing environment.
Oh, this is interesting.
I don't remember the arguments to this particular Lambda function, so I'm not going to enter them here. But I could actually put in test data, trigger an invoke.
That's very nice.
Inside here, I can look at the logs, configuration, etc. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do from the Explorer as you're working with the code and the resources that your code needs. But that's not the only thing we can do. So we can also deploy from the IDE.
Okay.
So now, this isn't something you're going to do in production, right?
No,
you're not going to use your IDE to deploy production. But if you're a developer and you're in an iterative, deploy, test, redeploy kind of cycle, this can be really convenient in your test environments. So all you need to do is right-click on your project, and you'll see there's a couple of publish options down here. Publish container, publish to Elastic Beanstalk, our VM service. All this brand new publish to AWS preview feature. This is a whole new deployment experience.
Oh, really?
It's coming. It's out now in preview.
I see publish container to AWS too.
You see publish container because this project has a Docker file.
Oh, interesting.
So the IDE, the toolkit detects that and gives you the additional option.
Okay. And what container options do you have? Like ECS, ECAS, App Runner?
ECS, Fargate, currently. App Runner's in there if you use the new publish experience.
Okay.
The publish to ECS option that's in here, publish container. This one is the older style of deployment, so it's a multi-page wizard.
Yes.
It walks you through all the settings, and we can have a bunch of options down here for what are my deployment targets. However, this is all being superseded by a really nice new experience that just simplifies the whole process. So in here, I've got a log from this morning's deployment that I did where you'll notice it says creating deployment image, and it said generating Docker file. This project didn't have a Docker file. Toolkit generated it for me.
Oh, nice.
Okay. It then built the Docker image automatically, pushed that image to Elastic Container Registry for me.
Okay.
Handled all the auth behind the scenes. Then it sits on top of the AWS Cloud Development Kit. So that's a system whereby you write your infrastructure requirements in code.
Better known as the CDK.
Better known as the CDK, right? So you can use C#, Java, TypeScript, Python, I can't remember the other ones, right?
Yeah.
But it's generated behind the scenes a CDK project for me that I can save and put into my CI/CD system.
Okay.
And then it's gone and deployed that CDK project, which is all of the output you can see down here. So I deployed a very simple Blazor web application in C#, but you can see I've got a load balancer, security groups, ECS tasks, so on and so forth. But it did all that work for me. Right? And if I click over here, we should bring up the running app.
Oh,
there it is.
Now,
I'm not the world's greatest UI expert.
You're not?
I worked on those older wizards, so that tells you everything you need to know about my UI skills. But you can see I did change the front screen here, and this is a fully functioning Blazor web application running in AWS Fargate serverless containers that the IDE I could deploy direct from the IDE. And now I can go back to my code, I can change it, I can redeploy. You asked about different deployment targets.
Yeah.
If I click Start over here in the new experience, I can do a republish to an existing target. You'll see it already knows it's on Fargate.
Right.
Or I can do publish to a new target. So I've got Fargate, App Runner, Beanstalk, or I can just push the image to container registry.
And then pull it from whatever container orchestration you're using.
Yeah, so this is all built into the toolkit. It's a brand new experience that we've been working on for a little while now, or the team have been working on for a little while now.
That's very cool.
If you're a .NET dev, I heartily recommend checking this out. It really simplifies the process. And on the side here, I've got settings. I can go in here and change settings for the deployment, etc. before I actually go and redeploy. So that's pretty cool. So that's one of the IDE toolkits.
Yeah. I was going to say, hey, guess what, Steve? I don't have access to that.
You don't.
Because of this.
You're on a Mac.
Right here.
It's fair enough.
I can't use that.
Right.
What do you have for me?
You used Visual Studio Code yesterday.
I did, yeah.
I think is your favorite. So here we are in Visual Studio Code. And
I feel so much more comfortable.
So again, if you go to the Visual Studio Code Marketplace, look for AWS, you'll find there's a toolkit there. Okay. And once you install it, you get this nice handy little AWS icon in the left-hand, is it the toolbar? I can't remember what this is called now, tool palette?
Yes.
And unlike the Visual Studio one, this one's quite an interesting one. It's multi-region aware in its Explorer. So I can opt into showing a set number of regions.
Oh,
the ones I use most commonly. The Visual Studio Toolkit is a single region. So if I change region, the resources in that Explorer will flip to the ones that are in that region.
But you can view all regions.
In here, I can view also. I've got US West here, and I've got US East Virginia, for example.
Okay.
Right? So in US West, I've got access to API gateways. So if I'm fronting Lambda functions or containers with an API gateway, I can work with the gateways here. I don't actually think I have any. I've got a tiny one here, a very old one. App Runner's in here. CloudFormation for managing stacks, etc. ECR, I can push images. ECS, we just saw that. Lambda, I can work with Lambda functions inside here, just like I could in Visual Studio. I have no idea what happens when I'm going to double-click this, because I haven't used it for a while. But let's just see.
Find out together.
We will find out together.
Excited to take this adventure with you.
Oh, I can do an invoke. Look, there we go. Do an invoke. Brings up a lovely little window. And I believe that you worked on this UI at some point. So, so here we go. I've got examples.
Don't tell all my secrets, Steve.
I have some sample payloads I can use, just as in Visual Studio, which I didn't show there, but we have these. Or you can type in your own, or use a file as a payload, and then you can invoke the actual Lambda function in the cloud.
Blue button up in the right-hand corner.
Yeah, you can also debug your Lambda functions. Now, this isn't true debugging of the deployed Lambda. You're stepping through the code locally using a Lambda-like container image. But
got it. I was going to say it opens a Docker container and throws you up into there.
Yeah. Again, we've got S3 storage buckets inside here. We access those. This one filters down to just the ones in that region.
Okay.
Right, so buckets are owned by a particular region, right? So this will filter them down, whereas Visual Studio shows them across all regions.
Right.
Okay. I can work with step functions inside here. I don't have any state machines today. Event bridge schemas, I can work with those. I have access to systems managers, automation documents. So this is like I wouldn't call it an ops tool. You can run automation documents against an entire fleet of instances, right? Including on-premises machines.
Yes.
So you can author and work with those documents inside here. And there's also a Cdk toolkit. It looks like I don't have it. Actually, I do have a Cdk one because I deployed it, but not in this region. So we won't go into that. But one of the things I want to show about this particular toolkit is the add debug config.
Yeah.
So obviously, when you're working with Visual Studio Code, because it's a language agnostic environment,
it is.
We have to create launch JSON files to do debugging at other pieces of work. So I can handily click this, and it will generate me the template that I need to actually debug this Lambda function.
And this is telling Visual Studio Code how to start debugging for this particular language, which happens to be C#.
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of features. If you go to the command palette and search on AWS, you can see there's a whole bunch here. I can create a step function, state machine, some sample program applications, etc. I can publish a systems manager document to system manager, so then I can then deploy that document and run it against the fleet.
Oh, cool.
Right, including, it doesn't matter how large. I can
do some SAM CLI references
some
here
SAM
too.
CLI, yeah. So the Visual Studio Toolkit uses SAM CLI under the hood.
Oh, nice.
So that's what's providing all of the debugging, etc. features. Yes, there's a
SAM
whole bunch in here.
The tool that you use when developing serverless applications. It's a CLI tool. It's also a form of markup language in CloudFormation, right? So you can use it and it will expand to larger CloudFormation for you inside the CloudFormation engine. Anyway, moving on.
Moving on. No, but this is a great tool. If you can't make use of Visual Studio, this is a great toolkit to get into. And one of the things
I love that you put that caveat there. If you can't use Visual Studio, maybe consider.
I've used Visual Studio since version 1, whenever it was, and I find these days my time is split equally between VS Code and Visual Studio.
I'm proud of you for admitting that.
I
love VS Code.
I like to move on and try new things. Right?
I've moved through a lot of IDEs over the years. It's
and one really neat thing about this particular tool, it is open source. So it's on GitHub. If you go to
the toolkit itself.
The toolkit itself. I don't have the link up here, but if you go to github.com/aws/dotnet, you can see all of the open source .NET projects that we have, including the toolkits, the SDKs, the various other bits of tooling that we have. There's a big list on there. You can jump off to the actual repos.
Okay.
So there's one more toolkit to go. And this is JetBrains Rider.
I love JetBrains products too. They are phenomenal.
Right? So we have toolkits for, if you're a Java developer, we have toolkits for the IntelliJ environment. I believe we have them for PyCharm as well.
I would think.
This obviously Rider is a .NET IDE. All right. So if you can't use Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, maybe you want to try JetBrains Rider. It'll work on your Mac, right? But similarly in here, you can go to the JetBrains Marketplace. You can download the toolkit, and it'll give you an AWS Explorer. Right? So this one is like Visual Studio. It binds to a particular region. but you still have access to credentials and so on and so forth. So inside here, you'll see we've got app runner, CloudFormation. We can look at CloudWatch logs. So if we have any CloudWatch logs in here, let's have a look. Let's take a look at some logs that might be lying around. Oh, here's some from a Lambda that I ran a while back. So I can look at the log streams. Now I can look into the actual logs.
Well, that's nice, too, not having to leave your IDE and go look at the logs. Or
that's super handy.
Call it from the CLI or PowerShell tools.
Dynamodb is in here, so I can take a look at Dynamodb tables.
You notice that I included PowerShell tools?
You did, and
instead of just stopping at CLI, which I normally do when you're not here, Steve.
But CLI means PowerShell, doesn't it?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. If you say so. So we have obviously Lambdas in here again, so I can deploy serverless applications to Lambda. Just like Visual Studio Code, I can debug them using the container-like image inside here. So all of this, I don't need to leave my IDE as I'm writing my code. You know, I work on my code. I can put resources into the cloud in the region I'm in to work and test against direct from the IDE. I don't need to go to the web console. Deploy my code, test it out, iterate, and so on.
Are you one of these devs? I hear a lot, you know, there's a lot of philosophy behind development work, right? But I've heard a lot of devs refer to flow, right? Where like they get in the flow and having to leave certain tools or certain areas pulls you out of the flow.
Yep.
I don't necessarily subscribe to this flow thing. It is hard to context switch back when somebody comes in and interrupts you while you're coding.
Yes, that's a hard one.
But I'm cool with moving around to different tools and different you know, UIs and things like that. What about you, Steve?
No, I am on the flow side of the fence.
Okay.
You know, for many years as a .NET dev, it was like, don't make me leave Visual Studio.
Yeah.
That was to me that was the mothership, right? Don't make me leave my mothership.
Yes.
So, you know, having rich views inside the IDE that I could work with and not have to, you know, jump out to a web console.
Yeah.
That was nirvana for me. That was really good.
Okay.
These days, I tend not to mind it so much.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, once you start loading an IDE with all of the kitchen sink, it gets a little bit overpowering.
It does.
Right.
It does.
So I like to have it filtered down. And then for the things that I don't perhaps use day to day, I'm perfectly happy jumping out to a web console or even a different tool.
Right.
You know, I'm equally good with that.
I'm a big fan, too, of the command line itself. I use a lot of command line stuff. It's faster for me. I'm not trying to be elitist here or anything. I know there's some reputation there. But we also have command line tools, too. Not necessarily IDE-based tools. Like, we've got integrations with the .NET CLI. We've got the PowerShell tools,
in fact,
obviously.
There are 3 integrations for the .NET CLI. So we have one for Lambda.
Yeah.
One for Elastic Container Service, and one for Beanstalk.
Use them all.
So you can install those with the .NET tool install command and use those. In fact, that's what Visual Studio is using the code from those behind the scenes.
Okay.
But here is the, it's talking about the Github repo. So everything that we have is github.com/aws/.net, .net. In there are all of our open source projects for the tools, SDKs, etc. So there's a whole bunch of things in here that you can find, including the PowerShell tools, which are also open sourced. So, yeah, there's a lot there.
There is a lot there. You've been converting me to PowerShell for many years now, Steve, some of it's taken, some of it's not. I didn't want to tell you this, but since we're live, I will. You can't get too angry with me. I still use Bash occasionally. I'm really sorry, Steve.
Well, yeah, whatever rocks your boat, Ben.
Okay.
Whatever rocks your boat. So that's Code Corner number 2 from Read Mars.
Yes.
We are going to be back with a Code Corner number 3 later.
Yeah.
We're going to be using Poly, and Transcribe. So we'll see you then.
Stick around.